We bring our creators into the beta testing world. We don't just want them to be content factories where we say, hey, here's a couple $100, go post this thing and then, okay, bye. We want to say, hey, let's go do this. We love your content. Let's give you the product, bring you in, tell us how to make it better. Let's work collaboratively on how do we grow this thing, give you guys skin in the game.
Welcome to Long Run Labs, a weekly podcast from the team behind For the Long Run podcast, telling the stories of those running the outdoor industry where endurance and entrepreneurship meet. Quick word about the huddle before we get into today's episode. If you're building a business, you already know how isolating it can get. You're making decisions daily that most people in your life don't fully understand. And the surface level networking stuff, it rarely helps. You walk out of those rooms with a stack of business cards and none of the clarity you actually needed. What my co-founders Jason Fitzgerald, Ross Yellen, and I are building at The Huddle is different. It's a peer advisory community built for early stage founders who want real accountability and real conversation. You get placed in a small cohort of people across different industries who actually have decision-making authority in their businesses. You meet monthly, you workshop each other's problems, and you build the kind of relationships where someone will tell you the thing you needed to hear, not just what sounds good. There are in-person sessions here in Boulder and virtual cohorts open to founders anywhere in the country. The three of us started The Huddle because we wanted this and it didn't exist. If you're at a point where going at it alone isn't working, or you're ready to level things up in your business, go to findmyhuddle.com and fill out the application. Link in the show notes, and we'll be in touch from there. And welcome back. We have Alex Maier joining Long Run Labs today. Alex, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Thanks for having me, man. It was good to connect with you a couple weeks back there in Denver on a stormy night. Got to connect and excited to be here today.
We watched lightning strike from the top of a roof deck in Denver, which was cool, in Rhino.
The younger person in me was like, oh, this is really cool. And then like the old dad, gray haired guy was like, oh boy, we better get down. It's not going to be safe.
You know, I had the angel and devil on my shoulder saying the exact same thing. I was like, damn, this is cool, but also like I better stand next to a tall person so I'm not the one that gets struck here.
Yeah, I feel like anymore I'm kind of edging towards the don't become a press headline in my life. So
yeah, love that. Well, let's dive right in. Tough question to kick things off. Who is Alex?
Yeah, who am I? So I'm kind of a schmattering, call me a generalist, if you will, an individual. I didn't come up through the ranks of marketing or outdoor industry or anything like that. The traditional path you might see. Cut my teeth early behind Juki sewing machines, selling textile products, prototypes, if you will, that we shipped over to overseas manufacturers, worked with startups as well as established companies in military pet product space. That was fun for 5 years. Got my degree, Washington State, go Cougs, and then had kind of a track record of getting to go through some pretty noteworthy brands. Worked with Nike for almost 5 years. Worked regionally with Porsche, Audi brands. Fast cars are fun, egos suck. And then more recently was with Onyx Maps, RecTech platform in the hunting, off-roading and human-powered space. And then the last 3 years, found myself leading a really amazing team here at OnWater as president, building rec platform and the operating system essentially for water-based recreation globally.
The automotive piece of that is interesting. F1 and NASCAR and so many of these sports where the marketing budgets are massive and the activations are massive. You look at an F1 race and, you know, it's shutting down a city or people are following it all across the world. Like what was exciting about cutting your teeth in that industry and kind of learning what serious players like Porsche and Audi are doing from a marketing standpoint?
You're talking brands that have been around for a lot longer than most of, I think, probably all the listeners on your podcast have been around. Right. So they've been through the startup phase and they've been through the turmoil and they've earned recognition, both positive and negative. I remember my time there. Audi and Volkswagen AG went through the whole, was it Dieselgate debacle. Audi had to drop their tagline of truth in engineering because they had defeat devices to beat emissions in the US with their diesel vehicles. So, but being a part of those brands was really exciting and fun to see how they, these are global brands that have regional teams, if you will, the Americas team. And then you go down to the region level, you have Pacific Northwest, you have Rocky Mountain region, you have Southeast teams. And then you go all the way down to the dealership level. And then even below that, you have your enthusiast clubs. And so for those brands to operate, they really have to understand how to operate at all tiers, which is kind of daunting when you think about it. And granted, they have massive budgets and they have, a ton of appeal. I would say the beauty of what they've done from a marketing standpoint is, they have their big plays, and I'll use Porsche as an example. A fun one that I was, really kind of a part of is the launch of the 918, the Porsche 918. It was a supercar, if you will, that they only produced 918 of these cars, and you had to pre-order it like 2.5 years in advance. And as a pre-order of that, you had to buy a Porsche 911 918 edition. But that car was informed by what Porsche does at the top tier. So like if you've ever watched the 24 hours of Le Mans, right? It's an endurance race, 24 hours. These guys and gals are on the track for 24 hours going crazy speeds through storms with the most innovative tech in these cars possible. And at the time, they were mashing diesel with hybrid electric to where every time they hit the brake pedal, it was charging the batteries, and those batteries were used to, cut split seconds off of their lap times. Right. And so you have from a marketing engine, like you see that and you're like, that's amazing. Innovation was born there as well as affinity for the brand. And then, the charge for marketing is like, well, how do you bring that down all the way to your local enthusiast, cars and coffee group that gets together at the church parking lot on a Sunday morning? And I would say what they did really, really well is they built and they leaned into this community, meeting each person where they're at and making sure that at each touch point, whether that's global, the US, the state, the dealer, the club level, that they were all being supported by the global brand at some level. And it goes down to your service advisors. It goes down to Porsche. You buy a Porsche, you can go and do the driving school there in Georgia, and you can go around the track in your car that you just built, which is kind of crazy cool. So, I would say they did a great job of activation and touch points at all levels. And even beyond that, it was taking the feedback at the lowest level, right? The person who probably thinks that their voice is never heard. That voice is actually, that person is given a voice to where global hears it, which is amazing, right? And it goes through those tiers. So I'll pause there. It was a pretty awesome experience. Again, fast cars are fun. Egos, I mean, as you could imagine with that kind of industry, when you're talking like racing development and, expensive sports cars, right, is fun. I'm where I'm at today because I love the outdoors. So definitely a good experience. Happy to be where I'm at.
How did you find your way into the outdoor industry? That's a transition that so many people, I talk to people all the time. They're like, I love running. I want to work in running, or I like hiking. I want to work in the outdoors. Like, did you have the thought around if this thing that you love becomes your job, you might not love it as much? Or did you know you wanted to be in the space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. I live here in the mouth of the Columbia River Gorge in Southwest Washington. I'm blessed to be, an hour and a half from skiing on Mount Hood, an hour and a half from the Oregon coast, Central Oregon, Bend, right? And so I grew up with a family where we camped, we hunt, we fish, we bike. It's just a part of who I am. I was an only child, grew up in the middle of a small town called Corbett, Oregon. Literally the closest neighbor was 2 miles away. Parents gave me a machete and baling twine at 7 years old and said, have fun. So you could say that I was kind of thrust into it. And ever since, I've always had an affinity for the outdoors. And I've tried to do as many of the things as I possibly can. I'm a gearhead, so I'm naturally drawn to anything that has a lot of gear. I want to kind of get into it. In terms of my professional career and how I got into it, I would say it was predicated on that affinity. So it was with a lot of people like we were talking about, you do these things, you love these things. How do you get into it? I would say there's probably two things that I would call out for how I got into it. One of those is general curiosity and passion. The other one is from a professional standpoint, and I would say I didn't do it by design, but becoming a generalist, right? So I was a professional photographer for 13 years, was behind the camera for a lot of weddings, portraiture, and that kind of stuff. Never got into the Instagram boyfriend life. Thank goodness, was never an outdoor photographer, never did any of that kind of stuff, but learned how to do photography. And through that, learned how to run a business, learned how to do my own finances, learned how to build my own, HTML websites. So started to learn those things. And I would say the biggest thing that's gotten me into this is that a lot of outdoor companies, even the big ones, have small marketing teams, small teams in general, which is, from someone from the outside looking in, you're gonna be like, oh man, they must have massive teams and massive budgets. And it's like, no, they actually don't. So being a generalist really helped me understand how to work with product teams, how to work with merchandising teams, how to work with digital e-com teams. And having done a little bit of those things made me competitive, I guess you could say, in the market. Also, I guess the third bonus is just like, I always think about it. If I'm out doing a hike, I'm always thinking about the gear, the products. I'm always thinking like, oh man, that'd be a cool angle. Oh, hey, that's a cool moment to capture for that. And so I'm just always in it. And the things that you think about, right? They say you are what you think, or you are what you eat. If you're obsessing it, you're going to find your way there. And if you're authentic to yourself, if that's what you want to do, not just because it looks sexy, you can get there.
I want to spend a little more time on the generalist versus specialist piece before we dive into what I think will be the bulk of this conversation around consumer insights, user feedback, and market research and authenticity. I think you're the domain expert in that space, and I'm excited to extract some fun information from your brain and hopefully help those listening apply it into their day to day. But before we get there, talk to me more about the specialist versus generalist piece. I too feel I am a generalist, a master of, I like, broad surface area. I don't like going super deep on a specific task. I like to be able to do a lot of things. Why is that something you like? And talk to me about the upside for that, particularly in the outdoor space.
Yeah, it's a good question. One that I've been sitting with actually myself the last several months. AI has been a big topic with everyone. And, with that, I've been trying to figure out like, why am I so productive using it? And at the same time, like where do I see people's careers going with the industry and all of this? And I would say for me personally, there's probably some like neurodivergence that goes into being a generalist versus being like a specialist. And that is, if it's something that's new to me, I'm going to become the specialist for a period of time. I'm going to go deep, right? I'm going to obsess this thing, a new platform, a new activity. I got into fly fishing with OnWater 3 years ago, and historically I'd done a little bit of fishing and conventional, but never anything deep. And then I got into it and got the taste, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go deep. And I get deep, and I was like, okay, cool. I've done that. I've mastered that. Now what? So for me, it's how I'm wired. I'm wired to dabble in a lot of things. Personally, I love getting a lot of different people's perspectives on stuff. I'm not the smartest person in the room by any stretch, but I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because it keeps me curious. So I love to stay curious. Maybe that's the common red thread through all of that. In terms of where the world is going between becoming being a specialist or being a generalist, the interesting factor here of AI and of where a lot of companies are going is you see a lot of companies needing to scale. And when you scale, it means that you have to be able to have a startup mindset, go into new territories, learn things that you've never done, talk to new consumers you've never talked to. You look at a company like a Yeti, right? They started with coolers in a very authentic group, and like their focus was narrow. They went deep in that. They built their trust. And then now you look at what they're doing with the latest campaign, right? They're hitting everything. They're hitting everything from like endurance athletes down to your backcountry hunters, right? And so being a specialist anymore. There's a place for it. Obviously, I love that my doctor is a specialist, but do I need the folks in my marketing team to be specialists? No, I need them to be generalists because I need them to be able to understand, hey, we need to go work on this B2B deal. We need to go, do this B2C campaign. Hey, we need to go tap into a new paddling market. We need to go understand everything that they're doing and how they operate. Right. And so part of being a generalist is being really big on curiosity and less on mastery. Whereas being a specialist is way more on mastery. I would say my wife and I are, polar opposites attract, right? So she's a spreadsheet gal. She's a product manager. She goes deep, right? She obsesses that and loves to be in that obsession world. When you put the blinders on, you go deep. For me, it's like, I can't do that. You lose me really quick.
I feel like we're quite similar. I have ADHD and feel very similar around the pop in here, pop in there, be curious here. And for me, AI has been a total unlock in the way that it understands context and remembers things that I can't remember. But then just like creating the infrastructure behind how I'm able to run my business now. Like I have to report on campaigns delivered for brands, and I have 7 campaigns. Like there are a lot of details involved, and so I'm going back and forth with Claude around like, is there a better way to do this? And Claude goes and builds a spreadsheet and a Netlify link that is public facing to the host, and basically everything feeds each other. And all that I care about is the dashboard at the end of it. And the nuts and bolts of it don't matter as long as they work. And it's just like, I couldn't have built that myself. It would have taken me forever. And there are just such crazy unlocks that once you know how your brain works, you can take advantage of. Like I've told Claude that I have ADHD and I ask it to give me guidance and instructions with that in context. The joke is it probably didn't need me to tell it. It probably could have figured it out, but it's cool how you can position something like that to work with you versus, being an opposite. Like I ran into so much friction in my career because of how my brain works and to be able to mold the day to day based on the upside versus the downside has been wonderful.
Yeah. I would say that the takeaway from this is like, it doesn't matter if you, are a specialist. I'm definitely not dogging that. Speaking just, my N of one experience here of being somebody who's not, it's good for both, right? Like for me, the strongest teams that I've ever been on are where I'm paired with people that think differently than myself. Right? Like my wife and I, for instance, like we are the yin to the yang, my head of product, he is an amazing individual and he can go deep on stuff and he'll obsess stuff. And like the output is like, I was like, I could never do that. Like I could give you the strategy and the ideas and I can talk about it all day long and then you can take and actually drive it home. And that's awesome. Right. So it's about embracing how you think and who you are. And then to what you just said, like from an AI standpoint, embracing the tools that you have at your disposal to amplify that and be successful in your own way.
So your LinkedIn bio or profile around your current role says, our work is rooted in product-led growth using better product experiences, sharper storytelling, and stronger data signals to expand access to water-based recreation and deepen engagement with the places people care about. So you have to be listening to people to understand that. So I believe there's a few ways to grow a company. You can have product-led growth, marketing-led growth, or sales-led growth. Can you talk me through what product-led growth means to you and how you frame that to the team?
Yes. Yeah. So I might be oversimplifying this, and there's probably people that disagree with this. Again, I'm not the smartest person in the room. This is just how I see it. So with product-led growth,
you appear to be in a room by yourself. So hopefully you are the smartest person.
That's actually very true. I'm going to use that one. I'm actually going to put a sign on my wife would roll her eyes. So with product-led growth, I think there's an internal component and there's an external component. So product-led growth, and as we think about this from a tech standpoint, it's that terminology has been used, I would say, for a relatively longer time, or more commonly accepted term in the tech space versus that of, say, consumer goods space. I know you have listeners that probably span both. And so product-led growth is, how is the product itself, absent of marketing, encouraging one user to bring in another user. Okay. External side of product-led growth is how are you, and this is maybe more akin to the consumer goods space, how is using your product building an affinity for that product that you are then motivated or just compelled to tell somebody else, Jon, you got to use this freaking water bottle. It's amazing, right? And so where this comes to life is you have, and it's easy to understand on the external side, you have this idea of companies innovate and they build things that are amazing, or they build things that are just have a novelty to it. And you just want to talk about it to somebody, right? That's easy. When you talk about product-led growth from an internal standpoint, you're talking about network effects and virality. And so one of the things that we're doing, OnWater, we're doing water-based recreation. We have a fishing utility product. We have a paddling utility product, very akin to what you might be familiar with using AllTrails. What we built into it is, we recognize that on Facebook, there's 3.3 million people that are a part of a paddling Facebook group. And as we maybe can all attest, Facebook is kind of on rocky soil right now in terms of where it's going. And so we saw an opportunity to be a purpose-built, to have the space for a purpose-built community to thrive. And the way that we do this is we say, hey, we're going to create a space for you doing things that you're already familiar doing, but we're going to put it into a platform that has more context to the thing that you love doing, whether that's maps, communities, events, things to do near you, and with a company that shares that same ethos, whether it's safety, accessibility, conservation, et cetera. And what we've done is we've built a way to say, hey, cool, you want to create a group? Click here, invite your friends. Like, oh, that'd be awesome. I want to invite my friends to this. Hey, you want to start a paddling club here at the lake next to you? That's great. Click this, post it. The rest of the world can see it. They can know that there's other people there, and then they're going to start bringing other people into this thing saying, hey, this is awesome. Again, it's very much akin back to the starting days of what Facebook was. I should say there is a difference between social media and creating digital communities. But product-led growth does that in a big way. Even with my time at OnX, we look at the hunting market. You spot an animal in the field, you drop that point on your map, you now go back to elk camp and you're going to say, hey guys, here's where I saw it, right? Just so that you know. And that is product-led growth. Say that person didn't have that app, they're going to download it, they're going to use it, they're going to get sticky. So there's really two components to product-led growth, right? One is that word of mouth engine, referral engine. And then the other one is literally like, how is the product itself bringing others in? One last example, Asana or Monday, right? Any of these project management platforms. The beauty of how they built those platforms is it wasn't that they had to go sell the CTO at the big company. They said, hey, Jon, Alex, you guys can use this for your own. Slack, right? You can use this, you can download it, it can get going today, costs you nothing. Network effect starts because they say, hey, wow, this is really helping us. And then you hit barriers and you go, oh, okay, shoot, I can only have 10 people on my team. I have 15. Okay, I got to pay, right? And when you talk about growth, that's how the product is facilitating the growth. It wasn't a marketing email. It wasn't a brand campaign. It was literally the network wanting to say, this is solving a problem for us. And we want more of it.
So what are the pros and cons of that versus a sales or marketing led growth approach?
Yeah. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a purist in how you'd go about doing this. And throughout my career, my mind has changed on this. Working with a big brand like, say, Nike, and, got to see a category, the swimwear category grow globally during my time there. It depends upon a few things. The first that comes to mind, thinking out loud here, is it depends upon the stage of the company. It also depends upon the product that company is selling, right? And so a marketing-led company there's definitely a place for it with a smaller startup. I would say when you get into more of the maintenance mode, a more mature company, you would assume that your products are dialed. You would assume that your network effects that you've built are working for you because you wouldn't be that big. And so now the problem to solve from a awareness or marketing standpoint is going to be, how do we establish in people's mind our prowess, thought leadership, whatever those things are. How do we establish ourselves as that key player? And there are a ton of podcasts that talk about brand awareness or product marketing? Like, what are the things that matter there? I think at the end of the day, it really just depends where your company is at and where you need to start. My advice, I work with University of Oregon's sports product management program as a mentor. And, the mentees that I work with, the first thing that I say is, how are you solving problems for your users? And is what you're building truly an innovative thing? If it is, then you need to work on product-led growth and network effects before you think that you need to go do a big brand campaign. Now, opposite, let's take Dude Wipes, for instance. Established product, everyone knows what it is, and your differentiation is like marketing-led. We need to market to a certain persona that we have this thing, right? So there's a balance.
Does the consumer insights piece become more important on the product-led side?
Arguably, it's the soul of anything that a company is going to do. So whether that's sales, whether that's marketing, whether that's product-led growth, if you are constantly focused on the internal echo chamber or the loudest voice in the room gets the decision, you're going to fail no matter what. So I'll start there. When you talk about product-led growth and consumer insights, what we do at OnWater is we do a ton of consumer insights. And being a tech platform, we have really short feedback loops. So we can ship something, test it, get feedback, deploy that feedback within 24 hours, put something else out there, right? And so for us, it's very advantageous for us to listen to the voice of the customer. Now, when you say a bigger company that has 18, 24-month product cycles, that consumer insight is also very important to understand, and arguably more important than, say, our world, because you could make $1 million mistake listening to the wrong voice or not listening to the consumer insights at all. But in terms of your question on product-led growth versus marketing, it matters in both worlds. You need to root what you're doing and what you're talking about in the voice of the consumer. There's some really cool ways that we've actually tied product creation to our go-to-market strategies that we can talk about.
Say more.
Yeah. So this has been something really fun since I was at Nike, and then we did this at Onyx, and we definitely do this a lot with OnWater. Is when we work with, say, beta testers, content creators, the people that are within that second ring around our business, right? Before we engage with them, or before we even engage with brand partnerships or media, we actually bring them into our inner sanctum behind the curtain. They get to see the guy behind the curtain. And we actually say, hey, we don't want you to promote our product until you've given us product feedback. Does two things. It allows for us to have a sharper point of view on the problems to solve. It takes our bias out of the equation, and at the same time allows them to have buy-in into what we're doing. And being that we're in tech, and I've been in tech the last 7 years, we have that ability to move quickly on that. You see a lot of brands do this with athletes, right? They say they do athlete insights. I was just I saw you in Colorado, listened to one of the talk tracks of the chief product officer for Brooks, and he had mentioned that they get 8 to 10 athletes to do product insights, and then that builds it. And then those athletes now can speak very intelligently to and authentically to the product itself. And so, when we work with platforms like, say, Popfly, to get outdoor creators in the paddling space specifically, we're going to these creators and we're saying, hey, we want to actually show you the product. Give us the feedback on it. What's good? What's doing right? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How would you use this? How would you talk about this? And then say, is our product actually doing that thing? And so, rooting authenticity in not only how we build the product, but then also how we're going to market with it is super important, especially for that word of mouth, product-led growth flywheel.
This episode is brought to you by Popfly. If you're a brand trying to reach outdoor, travel, and adventure audiences, Popfly is where you should be running your creator program. It connects you with the largest community of adventure creators on the planet, people who actually use the gear, live the lifestyle, and have built real trust with their audiences. Popfly handles the whole operation. Affiliate links, discount codes, creator and ambassador collaborations, all in one place. No more chasing people down over email. You scale brand momentum, track what's actually working, and every mention comes from a place of credibility because the creators you're working with genuinely mean it. Go to popfly.com to check it out, and if you want to reach out to them, let them know that we sent you. If you're enjoying Long Run Labs, we'd love it if you took a moment to leave a review. It only takes a minute, but it helps the show reach more people like you. If an episode has helped you think differently about your business or career, made a long run fly by, or taught you something new, scroll down in your podcast app and tap those stars and write a review. Thank you for your support. It's challenging because there's often ego involved on the brand side that thinks that they've built something that other people should want, right? I just ran a campaign with Amazfit, which is a watch company, and we sent out 50 watches and we collected 2 rounds of feedback, and the feedback was almost identical to what the product and marketing team had been sharing with leadership, but they didn't have the data to back their opinions. And so I've sat on brand teams where leadership wants to go one way, but customers and the market is saying something else. And so there's often that conflict between what are the people using and doing and buying the thing, saying and breathing and feeling, and the problems that they have or the opportunities that they have, and then the engineering team that's being driven by product, being driven by leadership. How do you reconcile that friction that exists there and let both sides feel like they're winning, I guess?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tension there anymore these days. There's a lot of data to be had. There's also a lot of noise in that data. There's a lot of mixed signals in that data. You have passionate players, especially in the outdoor and sports space, founder-led companies where the initial inception of the product was founded in one idea or one problem to solve. And then as they went into the market, they realized that, oh, wow, we might need to pivot. There's a lot of legs to answering this question in terms of who do you have on the team? What is the ethos of the company, that are more foundational? But let's just say your company is what your company is, and answering your question directly, leading with curiosity is going to be the first starting point. So when you do have strong voices, listen to the strong voice, document what it is, and then go listen to others. Go listen to others with differing points of view. Part of being a leader is understanding that there might be a better solution to things. And if you're curious about other people's opinions and thoughts or perspectives on something, you're going to be able to triangulate and help lead your team to a consensus. And you're not always going to get there. You absolutely will not get there. I mean, we just had a meeting today where we are diverging on a topic of how should we approach solving this problem. And, that's why you do have, people on the team where we're going to make a decision, disagree and commit. And if it's the wrong decision, we own those failures. We own this, and we celebrate the successes. For tech, it's a little bit easier because we have so much access to quantitative data. When you talk about consumer goods space, there's a lot of qualitative data out there. There's a lot of opinions, and that is hard. That is hard to figure out how do you quantify that? How do you you could go to one trade show, you could listen to, you could go read one Reddit thread and have conviction and be like, this is what we need to do. You go to the next one and it completely contradicts what you thought. So there's a bit of having faith in the process, and that's a part of the fun and the risk and excitement of business that we're in, right? If everything was so formulaic, it would be boring.
Yes. I want to go back to the loudest voice in the room piece. That I've sat in rooms where that's how decisions get made. How do you back off from that and move more towards the authenticity of the customer or the needs of the customer, and steer a team to be focused on being informed by fact instead of somebody who is shouting louder than everyone else?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm going to say used to drive me nuts. And I can't take credit for this thinking, but it's definitely something that in the tech space that I've learned, which is someone has an idea. The first answer is, yes, let's do that. But let's test it. How might we test this, right? How might we test this idea? You have a lot of conviction. How can we give ourselves a stronger signal that this is the right decision to make? And you're not always going to be able to do that in every situation. But that's where the fun comes in. That's where you can get really creative. Again, listening to Outside Days and getting to talk to some of the product creation teams there and how they approach stuff. There was one, it's the recent North Face product line that is, I'm forgetting now, it's called the Universal Collection you probably know what I'm talking about, where they've got a sleeping bag and a backpack and a hat and a few other things.
Yeah, I saw it all over Instagram recently, but I'm blanking on the name.
Yeah. Sorry, marketing teams, if you're listening to this. So the process that they went through was great, which was, we have an idea and we're going to take time to figure this out over the course of 2-3 years. And so they went to the adaptive sporting outdoor rec community, climbers and people that have other disabilities. And they said, hey, what about this? What about this? Let's try this. Is this solving the problem? Does this work? And it's that idea of testing and learning and collecting the feedback and going into things and having just the mindset and the value that says, we don't know. We are curious. We want to know, does this work or does that work? Does this work or does that work? And so as long as your team understands that nothing should be deterministic and everything can or should try and be tested, I think that you can circumvent those issues of the loudest voice in the room. And if that person's got a loud voice, they got a lot of passion. If they have enough passion and they truly have the passion, they just don't want to have just the idea. You put it on them. You say, great, I love that. Go test it. And then bring the data back and share it with the team. And they're going to do one of two things. They're going to come back and say, I did it and it sucks. Or I did it and you guys, I told you so. I'm like, great, you told us so. Or they're not going to do anything at all and they're just full of hot air.
Yes. Have you used Popfly in this process? You kind of alluded to it a little bit before.
I have, interestingly enough, I started using creator marketplaces back 10 years ago in the age of Maverick, if anyone remembers that. And I think they were bought, fast forward, they were bought by later. I sat on an advisory board for Aspire. It was called Aspire IQ at the time. Nobody had ever served the outdoor space or the sports space. Usually most sporting goods companies had, their athlete team. They signed the contracts. They definitely had that. Creator, influencer, ambassador marketplaces were really relegated to beauty, fashion, makeup, the Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson type companies of the world. And outdoors was really just trying to remain authentic to the outdoors. And it's also a tough place to be. I'm sure there's some COVIDism that we could throw into this of why, it exists now, but we do use it. And it's been great. It's been great for a couple of reasons. One, as I mentioned, marketing teams are small. They're scrappy. A lot of companies, even if they look big on at face value, their margins aren't huge. Like a lot of outdoor industry companies, unless you're in consumables, maybe, or you're selling really premium products, your margins aren't massive. And so you don't have huge budgets. You do big gross revenues. You just don't have massive budgets to go drive these things. Especially when you take into account things like specialty resale and wholesale channels, et cetera. The cool thing about what Popfly has done is that, one, they've rooted in, and I've talked a lot with Maier and Taylor, their CEO over there. They've rooted it in authenticity, and they've picked their lane. They became specialists, right? In that regard, and it's amazing. That's where you want the specialist to be. The thing that drew me to them the most is they support specialty retail and they support communities and they support authenticity all at once. The biggest thing that I've been impressed with is they don't view creators as just a content factory or as a time-bound relationship. They encourage it to be something where they're a matchmaker, and from that, a relationship should blossom and bloom. There's some stuff that we're doing with them to be able to support our specialty retail partners, at a very focused regional level, bringing the power of content creators and ambassadors and people that have influence, not influencers. I hate that word. It's been talked about. But people that have influence to support those local communities. And it could be supporting those local communities on things that we do with like river cleanup days or fly fishing lessons, casting clinics, those kind of things. And so they've been great from that standpoint, as well as we bring our creators into the beta testing world. We don't want, like I said before, like we don't just want them to be content factories where we say, hey, here's a couple $100, go post this thing and then, okay, bye. We want to say, hey, let's go do this. We love your content. Let's give you the product, bring you in, tell us how to make it better. Let's work collaboratively on how do we grow this thing, give you guys skin in the game. But yeah, no, Popfly's been great. I'm glad that there's finally a platform that actually gives us access to that, because it allows my team who manages those people to be able to do exponentially more as generalists.
So this podcast is in partnership with Popfly. So I need to put that disclaimer out there. They've been sponsoring Long Run Labs and Second Nature since earlier this year. And I went to them. I met Maier at Outdoor Media Summit in the fall and Taylor at another event in Denver, the CEO, last year. And I got on the platform and I just started using it as a creator and was really impressed with the infrastructure. And I have had a lot of conversations, particularly on here and on Second Nature, about the necessity of infrastructure to deliver a strong partnership. And so I see, and I work with so many brands out there that don't know how to measure success or don't have the tools to set up for success. And so, I don't know, 50% of the partnerships that I end up doing, I can predict that they'll be happy because they feel qualitatively that something is going right, but the quantitative side is not measured. And for some, the vibes are good enough. And for others, like to continue investing in a program, you need to see the metrics behind how it works. And so like you talked about, like I've personally had relationships through Popfly that have started off as a transaction with the brand that I like and with the product that I like and turned into a relationship. And so it's advanced off of the platform. And then I have a relationship with the brand and the brand marketer directly. And I feel like they're creating this marketplace where a brand can come in and say, hey, I want, 50 UGC videos created, and each video needs to have 3 different hooks, and they all of a sudden have a library like that. That's like the table stakes way to go about it, and the other is how you're talking about to invite the creators into your company, into the testing, into the experience, and really have that authentic voice from a group of people that is very likely to like your product. So it's not, shooting off into the dark trying to find people that love your stuff, or doing it directly with your customers and engaging your customers, let alone the group of 10,000 creators that Popfly has under their umbrella.
Right. Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a long time. The industry has needed it for a long time, and I'm glad that they've held true to having done it and built it right, building that infrastructure the right way, and not being, I would say, gatekeepers to that community. I'd say it was very approachable in terms of a cost standpoint. I'm sure Taylor could charge a lot more right now, but I think they're doing things to be in it for the long haul. So
for the long run.
For the long run.
You've talked about the gatekeepers versus gate openers.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about what that means to you.
Yeah. So you see this a lot with within our industry, the outdoor and sports industry. There's a lot of elitism that we see. There's a lot of discrimination that we see, whether you're looking at a great example is fly fishing. It's something that we're in. We do all sorts of fishing, but fly fishing specifically historically has been rich old white guy gets to go do this thing, right? And you go into a fly shop, and if you don't look the part, they're not going to give you the time of day. If you go down to the riverbank and you see someone else there, they're not going to go talk to you. They're not going to be very welcoming for you. You get into whitewater kayaking, and you show up with the wrong brand on your PFD, and they're going to look at you and go like, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to that guy. And so there's a lot of gatekeeping. I'm sure you can give examples in the running space and, other type 2 activities. There's a lot of gatekeeping, and gatekeeping shows up in many, many different forms. There are physical barriers. We've talked as an industry a lot about protection of public lands. very, very important. The doings of Mike Lee trying to do last year was huge. I'm glad we rallied together as an industry around that to stave it off. But there are physical barriers, there are mental barriers. We talked about neurodivergence and other disabilities that people have. There are racial barriers, there are socioeconomic barriers. There's, the fact of like, hey, if you want to get into snow sports, skiing sports, well, I hope you have a lot of money and I hope you have a lot of time. It's become like unattainable to get into in a lot of regards. And so when we think about gatekeeping, and I had a great conversation with somebody who's very close to our business. And I sit on the board with American Fly Fishing Trade Association, Hillary Hutchinson. She's a great ambassador for Patagonia as well as Yeti. And I asked her a question straight up and I said, hey, do you care about spot burning? And spot burning is, we're familiar with it in terms of hiking or fishing. You're like, hey, don't blow up this spot because it's going to destroy it. Versus, I said, do you care about that? And she says, I won't use all the words, but essentially no. What I care about is gatekeeping. And it really opened my eyes to this idea. It says, well, if we create barriers to entry via all the things I just mentioned, what's the ultimate impact of that? It's fewer people doing the thing. It's fewer people falling in love with the place, fewer people getting outside, impacts on health, impacts on access, impacts on water quality. Because when you have people that fall in love with a place or a thing, they're way more likely to want to protect it, preserve it, be stewards of it, right? Write letters to Congress, make donations, show up to stream cleanup events. And when they do that, they're now protecting access and opening gates for the next generation or the next person who comes into the sport. You look at almost every sport or outdoor activity out there, one of the top one or two reasons why people stop doing it is because they don't feel like they can access or that they belong in doing that thing. Number 3 in the fishing world, they don't want to touch a fish. And unfortunately, that's just part of the game.
Can't get around that one. Yeah. I guess you could. You can pay someone to take it off the line. But
you could. The guides. Yeah. That's why we pay lots of money to the guides, I guess. But yeah, that's my perspective on gatekeeping, opening gates versus keeping gates closed. Anymore, my hope is that as future generations come, that we are way more accepting of diverse perspectives and that we can come together, right? That a hunter can come together with a rock climber and say, we both care about this place. Let's open the doors to doing this. That somebody that says, hey, I want to get into fly fishing. Where should I go fish? Doesn't say, oh yeah, go down there. But they know there's no fish there and they're going to have a bad time. And they're never going to be there again. But that person spending money on tags and licenses that go to conservation and be falling in love with the place, you might want that person to be on your team, right?
I had a conversation with Erin Sprague, the CEO of Protect Our Winters, and she talked about the outdoor state and how the outdoor state is bigger than any state, physical state that exists in the US. And as a voting bloc, it's huge and influential and full of people on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Not to talk politics, but to talk politics, you're a platform that likely crosses both sides of the aisle. Like, how do you think about that at all in terms of when you're talking about diversity, when you're talking about access? Like, is that a consideration? Is that something that gets discussed, knowing that the people using the thing are from all walks of life? Yeah.
And I would say my general take on politics in business is that you can't avoid it.
You can't win.
You can't win, and you're never going to win. And when you talk about, the loudest voices and the edge cases out there, they're going to exist, and you have to be okay with that. I mean, that's part of growing up, being an adult, right? You're never going to make everyone happy at the end of the day, but you can do a lot to redirect, as you would a 5-year-old, which I have one, redirect them, right, to what is the thing that we both care about? What is the thing that we both know that is must be true for us to both be happy?
Yeah.
So in our world, what must be true for us to both be happy, whether you are in our just narrow world of water recreation, you take those that go for the bikini hatch versus the fly hatch, right? Your paddlers versus your anglers, they're using the same resource. And generally they're going to be like, well, screw you. It's my river. I'm here to float. I'm here to do this thing. I don't care about your fly lines, your fishing lines, whatever that is. And there's a lot of historically, a lot of rift between those two user groups. Same thing between your off-roading, overlanding crowd and your hunting crowd, right? Your hunting crowd wants roadless areas. They don't want roads because it scares the animals away. Whereas overlanding's like, well, no, we want these and it's our right. We need this thing. And you have to find that common ground that common ground transcends at the end of the day, most any political lines that have been drawn. I've talked to people that are extremely left and people that are extremely right. And when we talk about, and we say, hey, does fresh, clean, and accessible water matter to you? Well, yeah. Okay, great. Did you know that hunters and anglers, generally right-leaning, are the number one contributor to conservation of those clean waters? Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Shoot. Did you know that the majority of public water is bordered or is boundaried by private land? Oh, I didn't realize that. So don't you think that we should thank a landowner who's doing it right to make sure that they are protecting that fresh water for you? Yes, right? At the end of the day, you have to find the common ground. You have to be open to diverse perspectives. You have to be, I guess, a common theme of what we've been talking about, curious, right? Be willing to listen, and don't come into the room with a decision made or a point of view that you're not willing to move on.
Bridges, not walls.
Yeah.
It's a good
Absolutely.
way to put it.
Just no dams.
Just no dams. We don't like dams?
We
Fish don't like dams.
Fish don't like dams. Yeah.
Alex, was there anything else you wanted to chat through today?
Oh man. We didn't touch on AI, which I'm surprised we didn't go deep on that one.
It's on my list. I was going to come back to it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know. There's some fun topics on that one. The biggest thing that I would love the audience just to think about beyond what we just talked about is being curious, listening, and this does go into AI, listening to one another to come up with solutions, right? Whether that's in product creation, understanding what you're going to do for marketing, how to communicate with your sales team, whatever that might be. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to win over more people internally and externally. And I would say when you do that, you're going to, whether it's internal or it's marketing or whatever, positive word of mouth will move your business. It will move mountains for your business versus trying to just bum rush your way into making decisions and growing and what you're trying to do to grow your business. So
I want to go further on that. I don't know if it'll be out before it should be out before this conversation happens, but I'm having a conversation with Michael, the founder of Sentium AI, and we ran 2,000 prompts against 20 categories in the outdoor space. And we're looking at the categories and then the products and brands themselves. So excluding or bifurcating the two. So understanding sentiment around shoes, nutrition, etc. And then also looking at Puma, Nike, Brooks, Scratch, Precision, etc. So removing the bias of selection, the selection bias in the exploration of all of this. And we're looking at what are people saying and how are the models evaluating consumer behavior and consumer discovery, because a majority of people are using, whether they know it or not, when they type into Google, it's AI. And so it's being privy to how the models are talking about you. And it's really a return of PR and earned media that's funneling information into these 5 major models. Mm-hmm. So that conversation, I guess, will be out at the time of this release. So go back and check it out if you missed it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have that conversation. So hello from the past to the future. How do you think about the future, top of funnel being AI and the discovery and user feedback being so critical in what people are writing on Reddit and what people are writing on social and talking about on YouTube?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole lot to unpack there, none of which I would claim to be an expert on, but I will regurgitate what I have essentially aggregated in my own mind around this. And it's that we're eventually going to get to a point where AI has eaten itself so much that it literally is a boring, blasé, vanilla monolith of a language model, right? And I'm sure there are very smart people that are hedging against that happening. I've heard rumors that 80% of replies in Reddit threads are bots, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So who knows if that's a reality? When you look at how these large language models have been built, and you compare it to what we've historically been used to with like a Google search and then ranked results, is that although you approach them similarly to solve a problem or have a question answered for you, is that in the past it was, based upon authoritative voices and backlinking and, things like time on site, number of pages that someone would go through, so that Google could build a robust algorithm, and historically did a good job on this, to be able to give you what they think is the best result. The way that the LLMs work is from a consensus model. So and when you think about the different models within the frontier models, be it Anthropic just releasing Fable 5 or what have you, is that they're able to pull bigger and broader context. So meaning they can wrap their arms around more and more and more to say, okay, we're going to get consensus around this, versus the smaller models from maybe a year ago, we're going to create a consensus around this. And my hope is that as the models get bigger and better, you're going to get more and more accurate outputs. Now, the only problem there is what it's wrapping its arms around. What was the source of the creation of that? Was it authentic voices and real people? Or was it all the people out there leveraging the same system to then feed itself? If that even makes any sense for what I just said.
Unfortunately, it does. The unfortunate part is the reality that it's headed in that way, that everything is gamified, so much so that once you figure out the game, kind of looking behind the window dressing, you can't unsee it. Once you know, and it's sometimes you don't. It's better off left unknown.
Yeah. Purchase making, people looking to make a purchase of their next running shoe, asking for the recommendation from AI. I think it's about how you approach it. One of the interesting things that I just recently saw is Strava opened up an MCP that you can plug into Claude. And I've seen a couple other wearable techs allow that same thing if people aren't already just manually doing it themselves, is this idea of hyper-personalization. It was a startup that was pitching on Outside Days a couple weeks back that was essentially taking your health data and recommending nutrition, like hey, what is your body short of? What does it need? Here's products you should put in your cart. And that's a retail model. I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes from that standpoint because of what the models can actually do and compute. But in terms of providing subjective based opinions or directionality of stuff, you're going to see a lot of the sea of sameness. And it's just how we are, right? We see something that's good and we're going to go into it and overuse it. And then there'll be a new thing.
The power of the LLMs really becomes the data and the context that it has to inform it. I think It was the founder of Oracle said something to the effect of like, within the next 2 years, every model will be the same. And the only differentiator is the context or the knowledge base. So I fed Claude 10 years of blood data, 12 years of running data, and qualitative and quantitative feedback from my training log since 2018. So it had like 3,500 lines of what I was prescribed, what I did, how I felt, and life or injury feedback, plus Strava. So it had location, pace, effort, heart rate, running partners, weekly volume, et cetera, and then 51 rounds of blood work, dating back from, I'm 35 now, to when I was 24. So it has a lot of information about me. And I basically just said, like, tell me what's interesting. And so the power of these models becomes the trend analysis and feeding such rich context. And there was stuff in there that, like, sure, if I were a data scientist, I could have spent some time playing around and massaging the data and like meshing all of these like really dirty data set. Well, Strava's clean, the blood data is clean, but the Google Sheets is a very dirty data set. But the takeaways were fascinating. It flagged injury patterns that I hadn't discovered that show up with nearly 100% certainty, and the influence of things like sauna use. It had a reflective, like, actually, maybe it's not the sauna use, it's the life context that enables you to use the sauna 3 times in a week, while also acknowledging that the statistical significance was so high that it can't be ignored. And then a variety of other trends that it picked up on specific to the blood work, specific to my fitness as it relates to altitude and the time I've lived in Colorado and what happens in the summer, and the influence of specific training partners on a metric that it built of like perceived effort and perceived joy in a run. And so, like, it didn't tell me what to do, but it gave me the formula for what injures me, what helps me perform better, and everything in between. And so when you can feed it with all this information and then help it understand how you want to use it, I think that's the power. I could have also asked, like, what are the products that make all of this better? But I didn't want to go that way. But the trend analysis is to me the most powerful, one of the most powerful tools.
Yeah, the data is the new oil. It's going to be the new oil of the next, I would say, 10, 20 years with where these things are going. The infrastructure is being built, but that's not the point. The point is, if you have unique data sets, and every human has unique data sets, like what you just said is amazing. My wife just went through some medical stuff, and doctors were looking at it at surface level, and she's like, why can't they just look at like all the things, right? Like, she's like, I journal, I log it, blood work, this and that, and like environmental factors and diet and all this stuff. And she was able to come up with her own conclusions on things that the doctors just, I mean, don't get me started on healthcare system in the States, but
that's another hour.
She was able to uncover her own things similar to what you did. And I think it's amazing as a tech company, we're building correlations and data across 5 different robust analytics platforms that all have their own reason for being. But when I'm saying, hey, why did this chart do this? It's looking at my Slack, it's looking at my Gmail, it's looking at our debugging console, it's looking at the code that we shipped, it's looking at our analytics platform, our revenue system, and it's able to go, well, likely it was these things compounding that added to this. I was like, cool, I know why, I know what the formula is. And now can I repeat that? Right. And the speed that we can do that is in a matter of 30 minutes or 10 minutes versus having, unfortunately, sorry, data scientist, and having a data scientist, right, that would sit and crunch that data for us. Now, granted, I'm sure they could do it way better.
Tough decade for project managers and data scientists.
Oh man, I think it's going to be a tough decade for a lot of people. I not to sound pessimistic on it, what's going to come is some already major disruption. You're also going to see new industries, new products, new innovations come of this, but it's I don't know. Keep your head up.
We shouldn't be afraid of it though. Like the human nature is to innovate. And so I posted something about AI on Threads a few weeks ago, and the sentiment about AI on Threads versus Twitter or LinkedIn is colossal, like so different. And people hate AI on Threads simply because they think it's just the slop cannons of people doing content generation, and it's like a dogmatic, I must hate this thing because it's technology. And so I just hope that we can get past that, and that we can acknowledge that this thing can be a tool and we don't have to be afraid of it to some degree, because if it gets too smart, then maybe we should be afraid of it. But yeah, it's an interesting time when, only a few percentage of people are using it. And I'm not even using it for the full capability. I'm using it for its strong capability. Mm-hmm. But I think there's so much fun and innovation ahead, and we shouldn't be afraid of innovation and change. Granted, there are downsides to everything.
Yeah, as long as we no different than anything else we've talked about, as long as we are trying to approach these things as good stewards of what it is, we understand the negative paths that it could go down. I think it's going to be, I'm very optimistic about where it's going to take us. For example, there's two things that we've done at our company, leveraging AI. I mean, granted, as a tech company, yes, we use it all the time. And yes, we use a lot of tokens. And we also understand the interesting predicament that we're in as a water recreation company, being that data centers require water to cool, radiator cooling, to power them. The interesting thing, a side note on that, real quick, raise of hands for all the people listening. Do you wear jeans? Do you know how many gallons of water it takes to make a pair of jeans? It's a hell of a lot more than yours.
Eat almonds.
Or almonds, right? It's a hell of a lot more than your ChatGPT prompts that you had today. So when we think about the grand scheme of things, even agriculture, right? You think about the amount of water, 75% of freshwater usage in the United States is agriculture, right? So, you have to, I've learned these things because it's a part of listening to both sides. I think it was even a single beef patty or beef burger, it leverages or uses up to 2,000 liters of water, to create all the components for the burger, right? So I'm if you really want to save the world, stop eating burgers. But some of the cool stuff that we're doing and being good stewards of AI is we have a patent on the ability to take the photo of a fish, and we use our own data. You mentioned own data, MCPs and stuff. We use our own data to match against that of what we've leveraged and built with a proprietary model with LLM to estimate the length, the weight, and the species of a fish. And so we're using that to help support fisheries, departments of Fish and Wildlife, who go out there and they spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year per state to go shock the water, float fish to the top, measure them, do all the things. 25% mortality rate when you do that or more. Don't quote me on that. But it has a high impact versus if we can just say, hey, could all the millions of people using our products send that information privately to those agencies that matter, and that can be their contribution.
That's really cool.
Conservation, right? The other side of it too is that we have a tremendous amount of data. And in both the products, you're able to go and click and ask Angler Intelligence or Paddler Intelligence, where should I go paddle today? What do I need to know? What's going to keep me safe? What are those things? And we're taking all of that information that's in our platform and meshing it and saying, hey, Jon, you've never been fly fishing before. Here's where you should go. And here's what you need to know. We're not going to tell you the rock and the time and the lure and the bait and the fly to use. We're going to say, hey, you should go here and do this and be aware of these things, get these tags, these licenses, et cetera, and go out and have a good time. So we're trying to, we're leveraging AI in a way that is hopefully for the betterment of the thing that we are stewards of.
Love it. Alex, this has been a blast. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom and knowledge with the audience here. Where can we find you? And tell us where to download the apps if people are into fly fishing or want to spend more time on the water.
Yeah. If you want to find me, LinkedIn's always the best. It's the easiest place to go. Connect there. In terms of getting the products, OnWater is the umbrella company. You can find either OnWater Fish as the fishing utility product in the App Store. Or you can look for Paddleways, which is the paddling product that we also have. So
awesome. Appreciate it.
App Store near you.
App Store near you. Love it. Cool. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Long Run Labs. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building something of their own. We'll be back next Tuesday with more stories at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship from the people shaping the outdoor industry in ways big and small. Until then, keep showing up, keep asking questions, and we'll see you out there.